Hello, my name is Susheel Varma. I'm the Chief Technology Officer for Health Data Research UK. Health Data Research UK is a non-profit charity organization based in the UK whose mission is to unite, improve, and use health data for secondary use. Today, I'm going to talk about the topic around trust research environments. Should you trust it or should you not? But also in the context of real-world evidence data. Before I go into trust research environments, I want to talk to you about some of the work that we've been doing in HCA UK around collecting real world evidence and connecting that with patients and the public. We have funded one of our hubs called Discover Now, which is the health data research hub for real world evidence, and it involves a number of partners, technology industry, research, and NHS and academic and third sector organizations. It has been operating for over 3 years. And the key impacts of Discover Now has been evident already. So we have generated over 3 million pounds in income, 16 publications, involved in a large number of citizens as part of its design and working, have data access requests approved, and also recruited and identified to over 20,000 patients, for example, at the potential risk of heart failure. The key part of Discover Now is to derive insights from the real world to underpin change and innovation and then link that data back to real patients is the key symbiotic relationship that Discover Now aims to provide. The relationship has enabled us to develop a living lab, so collecting real world evidence, having understanding the local system demand, a deeper understanding, and building strong connections from the supply side to make sure they can enter into the market and transform the market as they go through and deploying their innovative solutions. The clear service offering that we've developed over the past few years is looking at feasibility, undertaking retrospective studies, economic evaluations, implementing artificial intelligence and machine learning, and testing it out in the living laboratory with health implementation. And all of this has been done through a trusted research environment that has been co-designed with citizens. It's one of the largest de-identified linked health care data sets in Europe with over 2.5 million people. And the success depends crucially on trust, and that's what we always come back to. How would you go about understanding trust in a wider ecosystem? And Discover Now is a specific example, which is quite important, which is around engagement of individuals. And over 50,000 members of the public have signed up to the Health Research Register. Involvement at the project level is an important aspect of this. So, for example, some of our type 2 diabetes work and working in partnership with medical charities across and having community champions and involving the population through the work and deriving impact. So development of our TREs, setting up the data access criteria and informed in our commercial policy as well. And the way we use real world data is an important aspect of our own operation. So being able to quantify, measure, and forecast the work that we're doing, mitigate risk by testing in situ, and solve for the whole problem, having a holistic view of both the clinical problems, the patient and clinician engagement, and looking at the operational problems in the health system. And a lot of this work I'm presenting on behalf of our partners in Discover Now. I'm presenting their fabulous work so far. And they've delivered new models of care, so bringing together clinicians and staff and patients, academic sectors, industry as well, and the technology sector to derive use cases directly with the health within the healthcare setting, and especially during the COVID-19 pandemic as well. And a lot of our staff has been seconded for work within the COVID-19 pandemic. And we have a wider hub network. We have over 9 hubs, all in disease thematic areas. And how do we scale that network for successful digital programs as we go forward is a bigger challenge that we have to address. One of the key examples of outputs that we've generated is using the Far Sight program, which allows you to recruit or identify potential recruitment of patients with particular clinical events. So this is almost a federated query system that allows you to search over multiple identifiable data and clinical event data to be able to identify patients and recruit eligible patients based on some inclusion or exclusion criteria. It facilitates better collaboration, involves the patient as part of its design, and saves time in terms of recruitment. And one real world case study has been the Northwest London's approach to population health management and inequalities, especially around CVD. The real world evidence has been collected by finding cases using Discover Now, monitoring the outcomes using real world data. Research cohorts with and without CVD events were on statins, for example, was collected. Inclisiran, has been used to look at being able to identify the impact of that, integrating that into the lipid pathways, and then bringing that back into setting it up with supply chain partnerships to be able to identify patients who would benefit from these novel medicines such as inclisiran. And this is a huge, impactful piece of work that's been done. So this is the Health Research Register, and we have consent from these patients that's been registered on this register, and we have 56,000 patients listed that can be contacted to be able for us to be able to recruit patients. And all of this has been done within a trusted research environment. I've spoken about trusted research environments for a bit. I'll go into a little bit more detail about what a trusted research environment is and what it can and cannot do, and how do we engender trust within the system. So pardon the pun of the slide, and the reason I've used the idea of a forest will become evident in a few minutes. But seeing a forest through the TREs is what we are aiming to do. Building a forest of trusted research environments across the ecosystem is what we aim to achieve within HDA UK and working with the NHS and other partners within the ecosystem. So I want to outline what the problem is of what TRE aims to solve. This is an example of a data access request that was recently submitted in 2018, and the time it takes to get the data access requests approved from multiple different stakeholders. So this is every single interaction between the applicants and the various different bodies that needs to be approved, and also the data custodians to provision the data to the researcher. So they started this process in 2018, and they only got access to it in late 2020. And you would notice there is a COVID-19 pandemic delay in the beginning of 2020, but that's minor compared to the amount of delays that's happening across the system. And this is very typical for many research projects. So typically, there are researchers, postdocs, PhD students, and other researchers twiddling their thumbs for over 2.5 years for a 4-year project. And that is unacceptable. We need to be much more efficient in streamlining some of the work that we need to do. And I'll touch upon this on how trusted research environments help to solve that problem. So TRE is not new. It's been around for a while, but we met for lunch in the early part of 2020, where we decided we want to bring together the data governance parts of a trusted research environment and codify the principles, requirements, and the standards around trusted research environments. And that started with a workshop in 2020, and an outpouring of support from the ecosystem ensued, where a huge amount of stakeholders, both nationally and internationally, agreed with us on how we wanted to try and build trusted research environments. And today, it's gone to beyond anything that we would have ever imagined. So now we have funding through the NHS, through over 200 million, to start setting up NHS level, national and sub-national TREs. There's also work with the UKRI around the DARE UK program to set up trust research environments for sensitive data, so looking at the health ecosystem holistically. So bringing in environmental data, for example, or transport data, and show its impact on health. So what is a trusted research environment? And this is a very simple slide to give you a very high level view of what a trusted research environment is. Fundamentally, they're a secure computing environment that holds sensitive data and provides remote access to researchers to undertake their analysis. Gone are the days where data is anonymized and exported out from a data custodian to be handled by the researcher themselves within their own environments. So rather than sharing data, what we're trying to promote is access to data, almost like a library where you're able to visit the data, take notes, and your what you bring in and what you take out is checked as you move through the system. It fundamentally makes research safer. People can be confident that all the checks and balances are effectively implemented within a single system in the jurisdictional control of the data custodian. They make research efficient and collaborative because you're not dealing with multiple tools, multiple systems. It's all in one place. And thereby you can derive deeper insights because you don't have to anonymize data. You can de-identify data, and the utility of the data improves with lesser anonymization. Um, TREs are provided this in a single location. Fundamentally, TREs are based on 5 sets of principles, which is based around the ONS 5 safe principles. So safe people, so knowing who is accessing the data, so only trained and specifically accredited individuals can access data. Safe projects around that the project must be of public and patient benefit and ethically approved before they can get access to the data. Safe settings around the environment within which you're accessing it, making sure high security and data privacy and data protection standards are implemented within those environments, and the data never leaves that trusted research environment. You get to visit that TRE in that setting. And safe data is around making sure that the data is minimized to the maximum extent possible to address only the research project question and nothing else. So you don't get to use other forms of information to be beyond the scope of your research project. And then safe outputs is making sure that the analytical output that you generate out after your analysis is also checked before it gets released and published in papers and other journals as they go out. So there's a system within TREs as well, and manned by people to check all the outputs that's generated. Now, again, there's a very simple slide. There's a slightly more complex slide. Again, I don't mean that everybody will understand this. So there's lots of this which I personally don't understand. But the idea is to make sure that there's information governance standards across all the different layers of a TRE, all the way from data custodians who are providing the data, having security in the landing zone as they come in, and they're linked, curating the data, making those curated data sets available and research ready, having a federated data linkage point so you can link data between multiple different TREs, making sure there's a secure workspace within which analytics can be performed, and fundamentally wrapping the whole thing with authentication authorization, having a purpose-based access control over what you can and cannot do. Again, the bits in the red are the things that we're working on in terms of policy around having public oversight, having custodian-led governance data access committees, stratifying risk, and having mechanisms to audit and control what happens within a TRE. And again, all of these are based on the 5 SAFEs principle. A very simplified view is what we did during the COVID-19 national course studies. Again, if you were to think of accessing any system, you'd think of, well, I need to be able to find what are the resources that I need to identify. So searching over multiple metadata about the data set, descriptive fields about the data set. So being able to look at that holistically across different data custodians, being able to log in and prove that you are who you say you are when you access those systems, identifying your cohort of interest for your research question, being able to request access to that data or resource that you need to access, transferring your analytical code into the TRE environment, and executing that in a scalable fashion for the size and scope of your problem. And then finally, receiving the aggregated results from the various different environments so that you can continue your work. Again, this is a very standard research workflow that we want to enable within a TRE. And I've talked about a TRE in singular, but actually there's TRE in plural. There are many TREs already within the ecosystem. So some of these national TREs, that's looking at data at a national scale. We also have domain and location specific TREs, looking at specific domains, and also based in various different locations due to jurisdictional control. We also have commercial TREs who provide TREs as a service to other data custodians. And bear in mind, there's also international TREs that we need to build. If science is global, our ambition should be global in terms of how we federate and connect up all the dots between TREs. The reason being, a very simple example is rare disease. Rare disease research can only be done at a global scale. And for that, we need to have a federation as part of the componentry within trusted research environments. So my argument would be the future of TREs is already here, just unevenly distributed and fragmented. The way we go about building this forest of TREs is making sure federation, openness, resilience, and having an ecosystem view of TREs is fundamental in terms of its configuration. So everything we do in terms of the services that we deliver within a TRE also has a federation component. So how do we federate identities of people between various different TRE solutions? So when a researcher comes into the SAIL data bank, they are instantly known as the same individual in ONS rather than having multiple login systems. Having analytics federation, so being able to take your code or analysis to be able to be performed in one location in a similar fashion to another location rather than dealing with multiple softwares and multiple coding languages. Being able to discover data and federate data, especially when you want to link data together securely in a seamless manner, is another layer of federation we need to engender. And finally, infrastructure. No single TRE will be able to provide the scale and ambition of being able to analyze 66 million patients. So how do we distribute that work and workload across multiple different sites, especially when you have to deal with specific domain-specific analysis? For example, genomic analysis would already be provided by a genomic-specific TRE. Can we leverage that when another TRE has specific expertise in electronic health records? So again, TREs, again, in terms of federation, is not just one level. It's not either or. There are many levels of federation. And we're not prescriptive in the approach we need to take, but we provide guidance as to how you go about building a federated network in many different levels. If your configuration of a TRE is local, that's absolutely fine. We'll provide guidance to allow you to be able to provision that TRE as part of the ecosystem. And should you wish to move across the various different levels of federation, we will provide you guidance and best practices to allow you to move across the different levels. And you don't have to move everything across in one level. You can keep, for example, Safe People, your federated identity solution, level 0, and move everything else if you wanted to for across the different levels. Again, looking at data and increasing trustworthiness is an important aspect. And the 5 states is not an either or. It's not you're safe or unsafe. You can dial these up and down based on your requirements, based on the data sensitivity. In this example, I've just used data sensitivity, but the sensitivity of the project, or sensitivity of the data, sensitivity of the settings, and also the sensitivity of the output. Based on these configurations, you can set what is safe and unsafe on a case-by-case basis. Typically, what has happened in the past is there's only one setting and you have to hit that bar to be able to facilitate the research. So if you don't trust the person doing the research, can you dial up all of the other settings to make sure that research can still be done, but there's more checks and balances as that research progresses within the system? So not eliminating, throwing the baby out with the bathwater. It's trying to make sure everything is holistically managed as part of the ecosystem. And again, I come back to data governance here. TREs are not the silver bullet. It's just one way of managing the data governance parts of managing research projects within the ecosystem. There's many design patterns around TREs and other research projects, all the way from closed and restricted to citizen science. We want to be able to facilitate that. TREs is just the middle level between those different ways, and we can move up and down between these data governance structures. And we need to build better ways of managing these design patterns around data governance so that we can facilitate different forms of research as we go forward. So again, TREs are not silver bullet, but how do we go about operationalizing the data governance? And TREs, yes, is a lot about technology, but they're not really about technology. They're about people, processes, and fundamentally about operationalizing good data governance. So we start with the principles. We have the FAIR principles around findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. The CARE principle, should we have a SAFE principle around what we need to do within the research ecosystem. Define the requirements, roles, and responsibilities and rules of participation. Have interoperable standards, processes, and policies and frameworks. Have modular design patterns, software, and libraries, and then finally have exemplars and extensible use cases, training and awareness, and community building as part of this entire ecosystem. And this is all work that is already ongoing with the NHS work that has been recently funded with DARE UK and NHDA UK and our wider TRE ecosystem partners. So we're trying to call this the prime directives, and forgive the pun again, this is around trying to build a united federation of TREs and build out that forest to operationalize, interoperate, and federate across data governance patterns. And we've engaged with the public from day one throughout our entire process of building guidance and specifications for TREs. All of them have asked us to be unified in our approach, have a standardized and centralized mechanism to build the governance structures that's necessary for build TREs, have public and patient built into the very fabric of building these systems, processes, and have people aware of how we manage this. So what is the future? The future is making sure we have a data infrastructure, just like we have roads and buildings that's managed. We have data infrastructure as a national asset and as a shining beacon for the rest of the world to look upon and build these collaborative and interoperable global networks. Have clinical and scientific driver programs to drive some of our thinking and make sure we can hit every single challenge that's thrown at us. Have a UK-wide approach, because typically it's been done at a four nations approach. We need a UK-wide approach. Have diverse data types, not just NHS data, but as I mentioned, transport data, environmental data, social sciences, wearables, and omics data. We need to have a holistic view of the reflection of data to health. Have thought leadership and expertise for innovative approaches for trust and governance, exemplify team science. And it's a team of teams. So there's no one team that'll do everything well. We need a network of these communities building and build partnerships across the various different sectors. Patient involvement and engagement is fundamental and crucial to everything that we do. And without the patient's trust and garnering their trust and making sure we can prove the trustworthiness rather than just claiming being trustworthy is an important aspect of the work that we need to do. And then train the next generation of scientists to be able to be responsible, ethical, and equitable in the use of some of the advanced training, advanced technology that's coming down the pipe. So once we do all of these things, we can try and build these federated flywheel effects. So COVID-19 was a good example where we got a lot of our prioritized questions from SAGE. We went through the process of linking a lot of the data, making sure all of that data is improved in terms of quality, making it findable, accessible, interoperable, apply new novel governance approaches, undertake that trustworthy research in a TRE, run that as a reproducible asset that can be reused by other research communities. And this flywheel effect creates loops as they go through in multiple domains, and those aspects of this work disseminates across the different ecosystem. And that's what we want to enable, and do this in an open and reproducible way as we go forward. So with that, I'll stop speaking. Thank you for your time. A lot of the materials here are on these bit.ly links, but fundamentally, the question I need to propose really is, do we need a forestry commission, again, pardon the pun, for increasing the value of TREs, not just for Discover Now, but for every ecosystem partner, and try and build a network of these to allow us to manage this responsibly, protect and promote the management of these, and enable innovative governance so that we can enable innovative research. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to take questions.